Welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. My name is Jeff, and I know people always laugh when I sound like this because I'm trying to get my radio voice going here, but welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. I'm Jeff, your host. We talk about all things HR, talent, HR tech, world of work, AI. Yes, AI. You love AI. And I'm also the founder of ScaleHR, SocialHRCamp, and a whole bunch of other things. And so this podcast lives on our website at GoScaleHR.com. We're also on Spotify and a whole bunch of other places as well. And so before we get to our guest, who was a fantastic one, I just want to share what this episode is all about. It's episode 84. Does HR need more outsiders? So it's kind of like a teaser topic, I think. As I always say, it's a really good one. So I'm going to just make just a couple points, and then we'll bring on our guest. So here's point number one. HR has evolved beyond the hiring, compliance, ER and so on. And so today's HR leaders are being asked to shape business strategy, drive performance, partner closely with founders and the leadership team. But they're also being asked to lead organizational transformation and change, relating to AI adoption. And it's not just in HR, it's across the business. And so there's a lot that we are being asked to do now. It's changed a lot. And so that raises a really interesting question. If HR has become one of the most strategic functions in an organization, should future HR leaders come exclusively from traditional HR background, or could experience in functions like product, operations, finance, marketing, go-to-market, so on, make them more effective? So we kind of talked a bit about this over time, but we're going to bring in our guest who can speak to this for hours and hours and hours. We're not going to give her hours and hours and hours, but Kara Wilson-Oliver, welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. It's finally great to have you on this podcast.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Excellent. So we've known each other for a long time, and you've spoken at my social HR camp. You spoke last year. Last couple of years at HR and Tech Crawl, which is during Toronto Tech Week. And so, obviously I'm very thankful for your support. And so maybe you can give our audience a bit of an overview of what you do.
For sure, but not before I remind you that you helped me get my first job, executive job in HR.
I did? How? What did I? I blame my bad memory on my three boys. Sorry. So go ahead. I totally forgot.
Well placed through Tanya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. Who took it to the Tanya and the executive took a chance on me with having a very shallow HR background. So let me back up and sort of walk you through this. So I've always been in small tech startups, typically indexed on social enterprise. My sweet spot is around 50 to 150 people, if we were to put it into human numbers. But spent my formative years in product as a product lead, for charitable donation platforms where we were processing about $4 billion a year for charities internationally, and all types of really interesting, working in a nonprofit that helped with mis and disinformation around COVID and vaccines. Yeah, I remember that. Vaccines in the pandemic. And I made a transition just before the pandemic started. Obviously, I didn't know the pandemic was happening, but I had decided to invest in myself because I was interested in this concept of applying product mindset and mentality into the people function, right? At the end of the day, there's this common concept, which is your employees subscribe to you every month, right? They subscribe to you. Right. And so if you apply a lot of this product mindset into the people function, wouldn't that be a really powerful and one of the most empowering things that you can do in both your career and have such a large impact? So in 2019, I went back to school, what I call HR school, went to York and finished out and graduated in the pandemic, which is when I met you, Jeff. We met in a happiness course and now we're smiling, remember? We met something and then we spent...
Your memory is insane. I honestly, it feels like a lifetime ago. I totally forgot. But who actually did that course?
Yeah, I remember that course. There was it was around happiness, and you, me, and Michelle Rothstein were in Char.
Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, Charlene was in it. So, but the point is this, it's decided to invest myself, saw an opportunity to sort of cross sides of the floor, but still stay in small, scrappy tech startups, but cross the floor. And, with the intention of moving into a people function, into HR, to broaden my experience or broaden my depth of impact and influence within a tech startup. So I went to school, had the designation, did all the paperwork, all the multiple choice exams, did all the things to make sure that I was competent, not just changing careers and kind of talking myself into something, but making sure that I knew the rule book. But when I went through the course, I made sure I also went through the lens of, I'm pretty sure I'm going to need to know what rules I cannot break as I help build and
Makes
scale
sense.
out the startup. So it's fundamentally different mindset than someone who's going into sort of a classic playbook. But I think this is important as we talk about this topic, that someone that's transitioning into HR, you can't just ignore the rules. You need to know the rules in order to be able to assess the risk. So yes, we're asked to do more and more, but we also have to do the basic work. These are still human that are working in workplaces, and you can't forget that baseline. So I would be a hypocrite to say I'm not a fan of people transitioning into HR from other realms. And I think there's so much validity on that. But I want to also remind us that, there's some due diligence to do. You cannot be a liability into the organization. You need to know the rules and be able to assess and figure out which ones you're breaking and how you're breaking them and what the risk is.
We could do a whole podcast on what you just talked about. I mean, we can unpack all that, but obviously the cool thing about your background is that, it demonstrates your ability to change, right? And be resilient and obviously adapt. I think the whole world of HR as to where you come from, I think there are many ways to, get there. I mean, I came up through business in HR. I don't practice HR anymore. So now theoretically, I'm in marketing and sales and brand, and which is nothing what I learned, I guess, in school. Well, I did learn a bit, but anyway, enough about me. I really want to dive into these questions because I think they dive into your career. And so, obviously, your career didn't start in HR, right? You came from product and then intentionally moved into people HR. What drew you to HR, and how has that non-traditional path shaped the way that you approach your role?
Yeah. The, part of it was an idea that was planted in my head well before I even knew that the seedling needed to grow, right? I was working at a tech startup, had a wonderful CEO, absolutely loved him, was there for over a decade, and was increasingly adding things outside of sort of the classic product into my realm. And then this is a story I tell. So we were acquired, wonderful, very lucky to be fortunate, very fortunate to be part of that. A few of us went over to a different startup, and there was a wonderful COO there who saw the potential. I said, listen, I'd like to try this people thing. What do you think? He's like, you know what? Come on. And we'll have you on board for, a few weeks, doing account stuff just so you learn the business, and then we'll transition you on. So that was wonderful. The CEO said, okay, you're the head of people on the Monday morning. And on the Monday afternoon, a lot of executives had resigned from the company. And, I'm shortening this severely, but effectively it was like, but product, right? And so I found myself back into a product role in, frankly, a in an offering that I had no business being in at all. And so what that did was a few things, right? It committed me to saying, I want to go back to school to educate myself, to earn the degree so that no one can take it away from me. Right. Because in 8 hours, I went from a high to oh, shoot, now I'm back in product in something, that in a space that just didn't speak to my heart. And so it motivated me to continue to research and to dedicate my time. And then when I went back to school, I went back to school. I was ready. I was committed. I went deep and hard. I overstudied. I got so nerdy. I listened to podcasts. I just committed myself so deeply because I've been given a little bit of a hint of something and then got it taken away. Right. And what I will say is it has been the greatest gift. I love the product community. It was great, but it is nothing like the people community. It's absolutely nothing. So it was the thing that was a virtuous cycle for me. The openness, including yourself, Jeff. It would be let me share this craft with you as you bring yourself up out of, an atypical route in, and doing a mid-career change has just been phenomenal. So it's a bit of luck, a ton of commitment, but also just the graciousness of this community to be able to invite someone like myself in, assume I'm competent, and then help support me as we go up. And that's why I always like to give back. Whenever you ask, I say yes, right? And so, but anyway, so that's the thing. Like I had an inkling of an idea. I was given it, then it was taken away. And then I just really knew I wanted it. Yeah.
You know what though? I mean, I don't believe that anyone in HR, achieves full mastery ever because, I think, well, first of all, the function is just way too broad. Okay. And secondly, the pace of change is rampant, but also companies change. I mean, how business changes, the political landscape, the social landscape of the market, economics, like everything changes so fast. And so, I mean, I've been around for a long time and I'm learning every day and I'm soaking up more today than I probably ever have been. And I don't see that changing at all. And so I think the ones that are able to adapt to this rapid pace of change and love it and just be totally committed to it, I think those are the ones that are going to thrive. I think even more so when you are talking about AI, and I think we'll get into that soon. But you obviously talk about product, right? Building product. It's not a logical mindset for HR folks typically. We've been talking about it a lot, I think, over the last few years. So you said that building people programs is a lot like building product. Great. Can you explain that philosophy? And then what do you think HR can learn from product team about creating initiatives that people actually adopt and value?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I can't claim credit for this, but happy to talk about sort of my personal experience in joining this concept, which again was a thing that spurred me in 2019 to switch careers and where I saw so much parallel between the methodology and the mindset that I had in product and bringing it into people programs. Again, if you think of your employees as just your monthly subscribers, right? And you are deploying products to them, you can't be unreasonable with it and say like, I'm going to deploy a product. We're going to do some A/B testing on it. Like there's just still humans at the end. So the rules aren't exactly the same as product, but there is a lot of similarities, which is, you've got end users, you've got programs and products that are useful to them that help them recommit to the organization, right? They become subscribers. There's a lot of, idea around programs and saying, listen, I know who my end user, I know who the ideal person is. These are my success metrics rather than just like, well, we better put out a wellness program, right? Like you turn it into a business strategy and a business plan because the ROI, because it improves the quality of your outcomes. It hits metrics, it hits goals for the broader organization. You turn it into a mini package, into a mini business unit, just like you would in product. You wouldn't deploy a feature or product that didn't make sense. You wouldn't build it all and then just throw it out there and never look at it again, right? These are things that are fundamental to product, to understand who your users are, to measures, to iterate, and to bring it back. And so the one caveat I would say, which I brought up with you as we were in our briefing, Jeff, is I'm a stage expert. I'm what I sort of describe it to people. If you would think about this as like a TV show, I come just after the pilot's been signed. I stay for the hard first season to get us renewal to second season, but that's my specialty. I love, love, love that stage. And so one of the things I've discovered through this is that is often not the stage that allows me to apply my full product mindset into that stage company. And the reason why is because we're typically we're doing rote things, right? We're hiring at a high velocity. We're laying down version one of a lot of programs and practices, and they need to be done so quickly they don't always have time for a full product design, it's type thing. We're taking common sense knowledge from past and putting out V1. Now, V2, when we have a moment to breathe, then is when we can start to apply the product mindset, right? We go out, we interview people, we say, what worked, what didn't work, all of these classic things are things that we steal from product. We still, like HR steals ideas from all different kinds of disciplines, right? We learn from marketing, we learn from sales. I always describe us as like a startup in a startup, right? We have onboarding and sales and account management, right? We have all of the basic functions inside of our little cave. Cove is maybe a better word there. So, when I think about like the opportunity for someone who has a strong product mindset to shift into people, I think it's really, really relevant. I think you will get to practice more of it in an organization that's bigger and not trying to like double, triple headcount in a short amount of time, which is typically the phases that I'm working in. But everything's going to change with that. So we talk about like how do we organize our team and what are the products we deploy. But this is where things get exciting, but we're on the precipice of it, which is we are now all product managers. Every person at an organization that has access to a tool like, as of today, Claude's the hot thing on the block can now be product managers, right? I can deploy, for example, here would be an example of something which I could never have done unless I had a bigger organization, had access to data scientists, a bunch of engineers and, time, money, etc. But, I can take something that's looking at so we employ outside of Canada and US, and the currency, the exchange of some of our team members, they're hurting because their currency is strong and the US dollar is less strong right now, right? And so it's like, I need to brief the CFO on what are our options, right? But I can now play in like, kind of an FP&A and build an actual model that goes, hey, if the currency, if the trailing currency is set at XYZ, and I wanted to put what's called a collar around that, which basically goes, let me set a minimum and a maximum of a fluctuation that will happen to currency that will allow. And so we'll buffer our employees across within sort of a certain range. I can now live model that in like a Claude artifact to our CFO, and we can come to a far better decision, far better. And it's a tool in his hand. That's the product mindset. Similarly, we could put something out that says, hey, employees, instead of watching a video of me talk about ESOP, here's a tool, just like the Wealth Simple retirement calculator that go, cool, do your own math. And the movement and the playing around and that interactive experience, is something that is far more valuable to me than listening to me on a video, a Notion page. And all I needed to do was, God, listen to this video, look at the Wealth Simple calculator, make a thing, right? And now it's this interactive tool. And it is a product that I've deployed out into the team. Now, I want to also product people, ex-product person. You put a product out in the world, you also get a warranty for forever and ever and ever, right? So there's a bunch of stuff that if we keep our product mindset on, but we can't forget about the full software development cycle, which is like, don't just throw it out there and expect it's going to, take root and expect that it never needs to evolve and need your attention. But I think like we are at the precipice of an incredible opportunity as a function to run our teams like product, to build projects and to apply a product mindset. So I'm seeing, at the stage of companies I work with, well, I'm seeing the opportunity that I hedged a bet on in 2019 start to become available for the stage of companies that I work at. And it is very satisfying.
And I think there's a deep connection between this product mindset and technology, though, right? Because ultimately, when you're building things for the HR function, they have to be rooted in technology. Obviously, you mentioned Claude. I mean, Claude has just been, look, I'm not trying to sell Claude, but actually, yes, I am. Yeah, Claude's awesome, right? So you can build a lot of really cool things, very quickly, and you can get it into the hands of people really quickly and do all of that testing and so on. So I think that really, really important. And fortunately, the HR community more broadly is getting better with technology. Is getting more tech savvy. I mean, are we at a place of mastery? No, absolutely not. I don't think we will ever. I think it'll be like an evolution of time. But anyway,
But I
yeah, I
think you're
just want to shift.
which
Well,
has solved the barrier to be able to really apply a product mindset and discipline into our own programs. That's gone. That excuse is gone. It's there
yeah,
as something that you have access to enterprise cloud. Please don't do it without enterprise version. And it's there. And so, now it's time to pick back up that baton, that really smart idea, that really smart movement around applying product that into the people team, and look out, like we'll be incredibly useful and powerful to future founders.
yeah. I totally agree. So as or the people function start to really focus on strategy, do you think organizations should intentionally bring more leaders into HR from backgrounds like operations, product, finance, and so on? And where do you see the biggest opportunities and risks with that approach?
Yeah. So I think, I think in a sense we covered it. I would be a hypocrite to say I'm not an advocate. I think it makes a ton of sense. I have met more than a handful of people who have come up exclusively in HR, and it takes quite a bit of like work to get them out of just the HR discipline mindset and be able to really, get a seat at the table. Getting a seat at the table, again, like, in the context of where I work, which is smaller tech startups, you have to be able to be multifaceted in the conversations that you're having, your ability to be expansive in your thinking. It's it's non-negotiable at this point. So having someone who has experience in the department, I think, is fundamental. I just want to make sure we don't only think about it as immigrating into the HR world, but also emigrating out of it as well, right? So yes, it's very helpful to get an ex-product person, an ex-ops person into a people seat. It's also incredibly valuable to get an ex-people person into an operator seat. And, dare I say, to get the full breadth of experience, like maybe you got to do a turn in sales. You got to be able to sell something, or at least the GTM department. So I think it's incredibly valuable to move and shift around. A lot of big organizations, that's how they get their C-suite, is they intentionally have them spend time in each department and each function so that they can get the full breadth of it. I think there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be able to shift in and out of HR. I think it's incredibly powerful. I just want to caution us with HR specifically, you can't ignore employment law and really, and just the human side of things. So it isn't a that you can just pop in without having the proper background.
Yeah, obviously, you raised a point. Larger organizations obviously having that ability. And I know large companies who move their next gen leaders around, but they can because they've got numbers, right? When you're in a smaller organization, obviously that's really difficult to do. So when you're running lean and you're obviously if you're bootstrap, your margins are thin, whatever it is, that's really hard to do. And
It is hard to move someone full time, but the power is to be able to speak each other's language, right? Yeah. And so I think it is one of the greatest things to both import and export out of the HR function in organizations. Full stop. Probably more than any other department. I think it's the one it's not because classic HR have worked exclusively in that can't do it, right? It's just that influx of ideas and broader organization is the thing that gets us all leveled up, and the thing that increases our business acumen and our influence and impact across organizations. So I encourage people, like, it's really hard. The Christine song, love her. One of the things she always reminds me is like, if you're in a room and it's comfortable, you're in the wrong room. Right. And that's one of the things, right? And she's absolutely true, right? HR people need to get themselves into different rooms and have different conversations to make sure that we are seeing all sides of the business. That's the future. That's the work. That's what our successors will do automatically. And I think it's something really important, get into the bigger rooms and think more broadly as much as you can.
so this last question or this next question is, you answered sort of a bit of it already, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Okay. So we've talked a lot about bringing outsiders into HR, but we didn't really talk about having HR leader move into other broader roles. So what needs to change for heads of people in HR to become future chief operating officer, founder, chief executive officers, officers, and so on? Do you have thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. There's so few and far between examples of it. It's just like, it's almost shocking. I'm always looking and scanning the horizon because it's something that I am personally interested in terms of a path. And there aren't a lot of great examples. So there's a couple of things that I reflect about. One is that because HR is just the best place to be and people love it and they get in. It's just like, and like, I can attest to that. I have been so surprised and grateful. And I might be changing my tune. This might be where I finish my career, even though for a long time that was never my strategy. So I think there's not an impossibility that is true. The other thing is that I think there is still continued to be a bit of a bias out in the market to think that HR leaders don't have what it takes in order to do bigger roles, which, okay, we got to prove them wrong, right? We got to prove them wrong. And we do that through the work that we're doing right now, which is, again, broadening our influence, our impact, and making sure we can speak different department languages And even if necessary, subbing for those departments if they were away. Imagine what that would look like. But there aren't a lot of things. So I think, especially with the ability for AI to really be able to superpower your business partnering at the click of a button, allow you to build out products, right? I think the world's about to change for us. We just got to apply our smarts to it, and we'll be off to the races even more. I think more than any other function, I really do think that, AI deployed properly will be massive department changes and career boosts for us.
Yeah, from my standpoint, I was a former HR practitioner leader, and I never really went into other roles inside a company, but one thing I always did, and I firmly believe that in every single role that I had during my onboarding and also throughout my entire process, I always made sure that I built relationships and I connected and I spoke to all of the different business functions. And I understood and learned what they were doing, what the challenges were, how they operated, all of that stuff. Because I've always believed that HR being a business function, if you don't understand the business that you're actually supporting, then you're sort of useless, right? So I think that is a really good way to build up that mindset and that repertoire and skill set to maybe even do something else, right? And then obviously nowadays, it's a lot easier for you to seek out learning opportunities to learn how to sell, how to do marketing, how to do web. I'm a founder now, right? And I do now I wear all of my hats. I do sales, I do marketing, I do finance, which I hate. I do bookkeeping. I hate that. But all of the creative stuff, which is not what I was doing previous. So anyway, that was my
Yeah, no,
2 cents.
yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I just and I like I said, I really do think this is a time where we're gonna like a bunch of ideas that we've been building towards, which is like this product mindset, building products and getting deeper influence and impact across the organization. I think all of those are now coming like, into this perfect Venn diagram. I'm very about building out my, whatever company I go to next and build out the next one that we're going to be able to have an outsized impact without crazy amount of more effort. And I just think it's exciting. So yeah, I would really encourage, for anyone thinking about transitioning in, I do recommend, doing some type of school and, just a chat GPT and asking them employment law isn't the same thing, right? It isn't. It's deep, important work that you have to be able to pull it in a moment. You have to be able to be able to handle a very risky conversation. Let's say it's an exit or performance or something. Like you have to be able to have that baked into your DNA from the default. But once you have that, right? Look out, world.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, I remember being part of many really difficult situations, and I can probably do a whole podcast series on all the weird things that I encountered, like early on in my career. But let's just tie everything together. What is one thing that viewers can learn about what we've talked about today?
So, and again, like forgive me for being on the AI train right now, but it really
No,
has.
absolutely not. Go for
Yeah,
it.
it really has come together in the last little bit, in the last few months. So we're recording this in, August 2026, coming together in terms of, the where a tool like Claude, we have all this disparate, deep, sentiment data, quant data that we collect as HR teams that are kind of in our head, but we can never access at the same point. But now is our time. You can bring all of that together now, really help inform both your partnering, but also the ability to produce actual products that you can influence C-suite, you can influence founders, you can influence your team members, you can write a compelling argument with a model behind it. These are things we never had access to as a team, but we always had the data, right? And so we were sitting on just piles of likely clean data because we tend to be pretty nerdy as a community to keep our data clean, but we could never harness the power of it. Right. And so AI plus this product mindset, I think this is it. This is it. This is the admin. I'm really excited.
I could not agree more. And we could go on for hours, but I want to stop there. So, Kara, I want to thank you for being here today. So, this is the Unmuted Podcast. I'm Jeff, your host, and we talk about all things HR tax, leadership, world of work, and AI. And all of our episodes live on our website at GoScale. SocialHRCamp.com. We drop episodes every Thursday. So we're all over the place. YouTube, Spotify, wherever else. We'll be announcing something really cool soon. So, Kara, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jeff.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to the Unmuted Podcast with Jeff Waldman. Real conversations, zero corporate filter, all about the future of work. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with someone smart. New episodes drop every week. Until next time, stay unmuted.